The night sky above Ijaye village cracked with lightning, fierce and blinding, as though the heavens themselves were enraged. Inside a dim mud-brick home, a woman's scream pierced the storm, raw, desperate, unforgettable. Modupe's belly heaved like a storm-tossed drum, her hands clawing the air as waves of labor seized her body. "Adekunle!" she cried, stumbling toward her husband. "Please, the baby is coming. Take me to the hospital." But Adekunle, sunk deep into a threadbare chair with a bottle of beer in one hand and a football match glowing on the screen, turned slowly. His eyes, cold and void of compassion, cut through her like a blade. "You didn't cook for me tonight. My shirts are unwashed. Tell me, Modupe, why should I help you now?" Her knees buckled, her tears mixing with sweat as thunder rolled across the sky. What kind of man abandons his wife when death stands at her door? Outside, neighbors whispered in horror as the rain began to fall. A battle for life had begun. One that would test a mother's will, a village's conscience, and a husband's pride. Stay tuned. Let's dive into this amazing story. From the first day of her marriage, Modupe carried her burdens quietly, her mother's words etched in her heart. Patience is the oil that keeps a home from rusting. She lived by that creed, though the oil had nearly run dry. With swollen feet and a back bent by pregnancy, she scrubbed pots until her knuckles cracked and pressed Adekunle's stiff collars until her arms shook. He never noticed. Adekunle was a man who lived only for himself, his football, his beer, his endless banter at the beer parlor. To him, Modupe's efforts were never enough, her sacrifices invisible. Yet she endured, clinging to the fragile hope that the man she once loved still lived beneath his pride. That evening, as clouds swallowed the last of the daylight, Modupe doubled over in agony. The baby's time had come. She stumbled into the parlor where Adekunle lounged with his eyes fixed on the TV. "Please, Adekunle," she gasped, clutching her belly. "It's time! Take me to the hospital!" He turned slowly, his expression as cold as stone. "You left me hungry, Modupe. You failed me as a wife, and now you want me to run for you?" Her tears spilled freely as she sank to the floor. "I am in pain. Please." Adekunle's reply was a growl that silenced even the thunder outside. Respect comes before mercy. The storm roared, swallowing her cries, as his betrayal cut deeper than the labor tearing through her body. Modupe's screams tore through the storm like a warning bell. One by one, neighbors abandoned their mats and ran into the compound. Wrappers clutched against the rain, their faces twisted with alarm. The storm's fury could not silence her agony. At the doorway, Mama Ireti, Modupe's mother, stumbled in, her wrapper barely tied, her eyes wide with terror. "Ah, Adekunle!" she cried, her voice quivering. "Forget your anger! Save her! Save your child!" Adekunle's gaze hardened, his jaw clenched like iron. Let her learn respect. A woman who mocks her husband must face the fruit of her stubbornness. With that, he shoved past Mama Ireti, stepping into the rain as though the storm itself bowed to his pride. Gasps filled the air. Neighbors' whispers turned to fury. Is he mad? His wife is dying, cried Baba Ojo, the village elder, his voice hoarse with rage. A man who abandons his wife in labor is no man at all. Mama Ireti dropped to her knees beside her daughter, her tears falling hot and heavy. "Hold on, my child, hold on," she shouted to the neighbors. "We cannot wait for this heart of stone. Help me." They lifted Modupe gently, each groan slicing through their hearts, and carried her into a rickety taxi. The driver, Fatai, thin as a broomstick, but fierce with determination, slammed the door shut and shouted over the thunder, "Hold tight! We race with death tonight!" As the taxi roared into the storm, the compound filled with shouts of condemnation. "Shame on Adekunle! May his pride choke him!" But inside the lonely room, Adekunle sat beneath the flickering lantern, cracking ground nuts with calm detachment. "A woman who cannot respect her husband deserves no mercy," he muttered. But the village had spoken. His name was now a curse.
The Ijaye General Hospital loomed ahead, battered by rain and time. Its walls peeled like old yam skin, its corridors echoing with groans of the sick. But within those weary walls burned a light of compassion. As the taxi screeched to a halt, Nurse Abike, short and broad-shouldered, rushed forward with a stretcher. Her eyes flashed sharp when she heard the truth. "Where is the husband?" she demanded. Mama Ireti's voice cracked like dry wood. "He abandoned her. He said she did not cook or wash his clothes." Nurse Abike froze, her mouth ajar in disbelief. Then she spat the words out. "And such a man calls himself a husband? God forbid." She waved at the stretcher bearers. "Quickly, bring her in." The labor ward smelled of sweat, blood, and disinfectant. Modupe's cries rose and fell, shattering the stillness of the night. "Adekunle," she sobbed, her voice breaking with betrayal. "You promised to hold my hand. Where are you now?" Nurse Abike bent low, her palm cool on Modupe's damp forehead. "Forget him, my sister. Forget him. A child is knocking at the door of your womb. Fight for your baby." The storm pounded the roof like a war drum, echoing the war inside her body. Mama Ireti gripped her daughter's trembling hand, whispering prayers, each word soaked with tears. "Oludumare, spare my child. Let me not bury her tonight." Back in the village, the compound was alive with curses and gossip. Women spat on the ground in disgust. Men shook their heads in shame. "Adekunle has dug his own grave," they muttered. "A man who abandons blood will one day beg water." But in the hospital, all that mattered was whether Modupe's strength could outlast the storm within. Hours blurred into eternity in the labor ward. Modupe's cries grew faint, her body trembling on the edge of collapse. Nurse Abike barked orders, her calm voice finally cracking. "Her blood pressure is falling. We must move fast." "Don't leave me, Modupe," Mama Ireti wept, clutching her daughter's hand. "Stay, my child, stay." Then, like the splitting of the heavens, a piercing cry rose, sharp and unyielding. A baby's first wail filled the ward, louder than thunder, stronger than fear. Nurse Abike held up the tiny child, his fists clenched, his cry defiant. "A warrior is born," she declared. Tears streamed down Mama Ireti's face as she cradled her grandson. "Oluwaseun," she whispered. "Truly God has done this." Exhausted, Modupe sobbed with relief, her trembling hands reaching for her child. She pressed her lips to his forehead. "My son, my miracle."
Back in the compound, dawn's grey light revealed Adekunle sitting alone. The storm had passed, but inside him brewed a darkness deeper than the night. A boy ran breathless from the hospital, shouting, "Modupe lives! She gave birth to a son!" The groundnut slipped from Adekunle's hand, his beer forgotten. The neighbors' judgment was swift, their voices like knives. "Coward! Murderer! You nearly killed her!" Men turned their backs, women hissed, children pointed. His name was now mud. At sunrise, Mama Ireti returned, her grandson bundled in her arms, her eyes blazing with fury. She stood before Adekunle, her voice as sharp as cutlass. "You almost took my daughter's life. This child will know that his father's pride was his greatest shame." Adekunle stood speechless, the weight of his choices pressing down like a mountain. Modupe, holding her son close, felt a new fire burn within her. She was no longer the silent wife chained by fear. She was a mother, reborn in pain and glory, while the man who failed her stood shattered in the ruins of his pride. The morning sun broke fully over Ijaye, washing the land in light, yet Adekunle's home remained dark. Beneath the great Iroko tree, the elders gathered. Baba Ojo struck his staff against the earth. "A man who abandons his wife in the jaws of death is not fit to walk among us. What say you, people of Ijaye?" The crowd roared, "Exile him! Exile him!" Adekunle was cast from his home for 7 seasons, forbidden to claim wife or child until he proved his repentance. His pride, once a crown, was now a chain dragging him into the dust. Modupe, still weak but radiant with her newborn, turned her back on him. She whispered to the child, "You will never inherit your father's shame. You will walk in light, not darkness."
As Adekunle stumbled into exile, the women of Ijaye lifted their voices in song, their ululations piercing the sky. They sang not of his downfall, but of Modupe's survival, of a mother who fought death and returned triumphant. The storm had tried to claim her, but Modupe emerged a lioness, scarred, unbroken, and forever remembered as the woman who defied both death and a husband's cruelty. And so the storm passed, but its memory never left the people of Ijaye. They told and retold the tale of Modupe, the woman who fought both death and betrayal and returned with life in her arms. They told of Adekunle, the man whose pride became his prison, whose name turned bitter on every tongue. The elders would gather children beneath the Iroko tree and say, "A husband who abandons his wife in her hour of need abandons himself. A man who chooses pride over compassion will one day eat shame as food. But a mother's courage, it is stronger than thunder, deeper than rivers, and eternal like the sky." From that day, the women of Ijaye carried Modupe's name in songs, their voices rising like drums in the night. She walked through the storm, and she came back a lioness. And when children asked why thunder cracks so loud in the sky, the elders would smile and whisper, "It is the heavens reminding us that no man's pride is greater than a mother's pain, and no storm can silence a mother's love."
And so the tale of Modupe, the lioness of Ijaye, reminds us all that no matter the storm we face, whether betrayal, pain, or loss, strength lies within us to overcome.
As Modupe found her voice, her courage, and her triumph, so too can we all rise in our most difficult moments. If this story moved you, touched your heart, and left you inspired, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with those who need to hear this message of resilience. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story of strength, courage, and love. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember, a mother's love is the greatest force of all.